Guys, how's it going? My name is Jeff, sometimes known as Jalopy Jeff, and today we're going to be taking a look at the 2023 Toyota Highlander Hybrid Platinum all-wheel drive, which is a suburban assault vehicle on suburbia. This is a stately up-tiered vehicle which features captain chairs, 14 cup holders, a 7-seat arrangement, and a luxury interior with nice features. But first, a quick word from our sponsor.
Today's Auto Hunter Cinema video is brought to you by LandAirSea. Keep tabs on all your valuable assets on the palm of your hand. Remember, with LandAirSea, theft is temporary. Visit LandAirSea.com to order your LandAirSea GPS unit for your classic vehicle.
So today we're going to be taking a look at the 2023 Toyota Highlander Hybrid Platinum all-wheel drive. So there's a lot to digest in there. I'm going to be walking you around the exterior. We'll talk about some of the different features and what's going on here, the spec of this particular vehicle. We'll talk about the engine, the interior, and then we'll take it for a drive. So starting with the exterior, this beautiful car here is finished in a color that's called Blueprint. So it's a rather dark blue hue here that looks fantastic. Sometimes it looks black in darker lighting and things like that, but it's got a little bit of flake in it and it looks fantastic in this particular arrangement. Right off the bat, looking at the front, we also have our special silver trim here, which we'll also find as we get around to the back is also available there, which Toyota describes as silver, but I think it's supposed to represent the fact that this is actually the platinum trim level of vehicle. This is also the hybrid model, which means we'll have the hybrid drivetrain we'll be getting into a bit. And then, of course, in true Toyota hybrid fashion, Toyota and Lexus always do this blue hue that you'll find around the emblem, which of course is a huge flag, basically a symbol saying this is in fact a hybrid vehicle. Has some nice black trim, some LED headlights, and this actually has LED taillights as well. We have some big 20-inch premium wheels on the side here that look fantastic in the sort of alloy that they're finished in. We got some nice black trim, and then we have our all-wheel drive badge, which this car is actually equipped with the on-demand all-wheel drive E that we'll talk about a little bit more. As we get to the windows here, these look like generic windows, but one of the cool facts about these is the fact that these are actually noise-reducing windows. So you'll find in the cabin you can actually get a much quieter experience. Here we have some mirrors that actually fold in when the car is parked, unfold when the car is unlocked, and you can actually manually fold them in when you feel like doing so. We have some roof rack options here, but then we have a really cool design detail. You'll notice we have this swoop right here. And I really like that because that swoop is typically associated with Toyota. You'll see it in design elements like things on the Toyota Supra, and you'll also find it on other SUVs and even the minivans like the Toyota Sienna. So that's a really cool feature that is very quickly identifying itself as a Toyota trademark. And then as we come around to the back, we have our LED taillights, some more plastic that's silver we mentioned, kind of identifying that this is a platinum. We have our Highlander badging, our platinum badging, and then our hybrid badging and more bluing here. Now, one of the really cool features around this SUV is because it's all about being usable, all about that utility and the life of suburbia. One of the cool things that you can do is if you walk up while the vehicle is locked, let's say my hands are full, boom. Now this opens, so it has a hands-free opening mode, of course has a button on the fob as well, but that goes ahead and that opens up the back seat. So let's talk about what we've got going in here just briefly before we jump into the engine and then the interior. You can see that this car actually has a third row, and if we go ahead, we can easily pull the seats up from the back without even having to hop in. And then of course we can also lower the seats back down should we want a bigger space. You actually only get about 16 cubic feet with the third row up, so I imagine most of the time you're going to want to have the seats down, but plenty of room back here for whatever you need up to that second row in the captain seats, which can also be folded down. But let's go ahead. We're going to close that hatch real quick, which is also motorized when it drops, and then we're going to be getting into the drivetrain there. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at what's under the hood. So we'll go ahead and pop the hood on the Toyota Highlander. And now we don't have hood struts on here, which isn't totally unusual. Typically in hybrid fashion, what Toyota will usually do is take some extra cost-effective or weight savings measure. This vehicle in particular weighs about 4,595 pounds, which is reasonably light considering it's an SUV and a hybrid. Of course, those batteries do weigh a lot in combination with some of the other features we have, and including the all-wheel drive system. So let's talk about the power plant in this. So the hybrid system concludes of a 2 2.5 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder mated to 2 synchronous magnetic electric motors that are inside the vehicle. The motor on its own makes about 186 horsepower, but combined with the electric motors makes about 243 horsepower total, which is not too shabby. It picks up a little bit when it needs to, while also providing the awesome economy of using a naturally aspirated 4-cylinder. So of course it's not too bad on gas. We of course have our bright orange cables, which of course are a federal requirement for reminding us that this is a either electric or hybrid vehicle. So that's always easy and very clear to see in the engine bay should you ever need to do any maintenance or take a look at this yourself. Now, one of the really cool parts about this, as we mentioned earlier, is that all-wheel drive system. It is a on-demand all-wheel drive system. This vehicle is primarily front-wheel drive, so this engine and motor powertrain provides power to a CVTe transmission. So what that does is that makes the vehicle front-wheel drive, but it can be all-wheel drive when it needs it for traction purposes, picking it up a little bit, whatever the case is, and we'll talk about how that kicks in with some of the other driving modes on the later sections of the video. But what's cool about that is there's no drive shaft in the car. That actually saves weight. There's no drive shaft providing a connection to the rear axle. Instead, what Toyota's done is there is an electric motor that sits where your diff would be in the back there. That sends the power to the rear axle, so that can be activated in an instant because you get instant torque with the electric motor whenever you need it. So that's a quick look at the powertrain. Let's go ahead, let's hop in the interior and let's talk about what's going on in there. Okay, so now we're on the inside of our Toyota Highlander Hybrid Platinum, and we have a very stately, up-tiered interior in here for the Platinum. So we have some nice, cool luxury features, some bits that are acting like they're carbon fiber, some interesting materials. We have some faux wood, which is a sort of gray finish, and I think it looks pretty good. We have a lot of synthetic leather materials, and we actually have some updated changes that have been added for 2023. First of all, being things like this. The key charger, which has actually been added here. There used to be a wireless charger inside of this little containment here, but they've moved it here, and I think it's a much better spot. First of all, this charger is fantastic. It can even charge a phone through a case, which is pretty impressive. It doesn't want other things in between it really, but it works fantastic in that case, at least from my experience with it. We have some of our various driving mode buttons that we'll get into in the driving portion. Your basic things like your trail, EV, sport, normal, eco, traction control off, all that stuff. Traction control off, I can't imagine you'll be touching too much in this vehicle, but it's still there if you need it nonetheless. We have 2 of our 14 cup holders. There's also 1 on each door for the front side. The rest are going to be in the back of the car. Up here we have a very big 12.3-inch display, and this has all of your climate control features, which is a really cool mix of components in here. Everything to manage all of the different zones. This car actually has a 3-zone climate control system, meaning either the driver and passenger can each have their own zone, the passenger can control theirs separately, and the rear is actually also controlled separately. So yes, there is climate control for the rear, at least for the captain's chairs, get the luxury elements. You of course get ventilated and heated seats up front as well. And then over on this left side, we have some of our other buttons that control things like our camera control. We get our heated steering wheel. We have the AC vent that's in the back. So if you wanted your AC powered, like if you're camping, for example, which this is perfect for, you have that back there. And you can even actually pop the hatch from the front as well. And then we have our typical mirror buttons and our button to, of course, close our mirrors. We have our soundproofing windows, which are great because this JBL sound system can actually bump music through here. You can actually change the settings in there if you'd like, turn up the bass, whatever your preference is. You can manage all of that from in here. And then to top it all off, you actually have a 10-inch digital display for your gauge cluster that can be managed and changed and sort of moved around depending on what your preference is. So that's a pretty fantastic blend. And then to top it all off, one of the things I didn't mention earlier is that this actually has a 3,500 pound towing capacity as well with a heads-up display. So this has a ton of technology and it's doing its best to be a jack of all trades for whatever you might need. This is the vehicle where if you had to purchase one vehicle for the rest of your life, this is trying to be everything for that. And plus, I really like the contrast of this gray-black interior with the blue color that we have, which is a pretty cool feature. One of the other things you can do, this is a pretty spacious cabin already, but if you've decided you want to open it up, this also has a beautiful sunroof. We can go ahead and open this up, and as you can see, it goes all the way back. So even the benefits of the sunroof can be had if you are in the back seats. But now that we've mentioned the back seats, I think we should go ahead and hop back there and talk about what sort of space options you have in there. Okay, so now I'm in the second row of the Platinum Highlander Hybrid, or where the captain's chairs are. So this has a total of 7 seats. There are other versions of the Highlander. If you want your sort of standard bench seat to fit 8, you can in this car, but this is the up-tiered version, which I think is better suited for those who are either picking a vehicle for themselves, let's say, and it might be driving some adult friends, or even have older kids, let's say, that need more room in the back and don't really need to fill all that family roll. This is a fantastic vehicle for that, like I said. One of the cool things about this is you actually get heated seats in each of the captain's chairs. So this is a fantastic vehicle for taking a road trip on. You get the benefits of the moonroof here still. You get, of course, like I mentioned, your third zone controls. You have all the controls available here. You get some charging outlets as well as an AC plug, perfect for doing any work or anything like that if you needed to. The rear gets cup holders in the center here, which is one of the huge benefits of the captain's seats. You get 2 in the door as well on each side, and then they get, of course, a little vent here on the side as well. And then, let's say it's getting a little hot on that road trip, boom, you have shades built into the door here that you can go ahead and place up, and now you can even take a nap in the back if you wanted to. Headroom wise, I'm about 6 feet tall, so you can see that I've got a fair amount of clearance back here. The back seats, the third row, really not that usable. Perfect for pets or really small children, but you're really not going to be fitting anybody back there once they get to at least middle school age, I would say, or older. So not totally usable, but you'll find the last of the 4 cup holders in the back there as well, bringing our total to 14 cup holders, which is very important for us Americans. So that's a cool feature to have there nonetheless. But I think we've done a good job of walking through the overall feel of the vehicle and everything like that. So now it's time to take it for a drive. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what it's like to drive the 2023 Highlander Hybrid Platinum. So we'll go ahead and put it in drive. This does actually have the manual shifting mode, although I personally haven't really found myself using it. I think it's a little out of place on this vehicle, but it exists if that's up your alley nonetheless. This has your typical Toyota layout for what you would expect as far as your multi-informational display buttons. You do have a volume adjustment button, but if you want to reach the actual volume knob on the actual center console here, it's actually just out of reach for me, which is kind of frustrating. Whenever I'm going through a drive-through and I want to reach for the volume button, you can't. Little weird. Like I said, you still have a button on the steering wheel, and you can, of course, bend over to reach it. That's just something weird that I noticed. I thought it was a little odd that it was that far overwards, but at least you get your large center console screen. On that screen, you'll be able to find some other information while you're driving. Aside from maps and music, you'll also have your all-wheel drive, so it'll actually tell you when it's utilizing different parts of the system, either the front or the rear wheels, to let you know how it's sort of vectoring the car. You also have an energy flow, because this is a hybrid, that'll actually tell you how it's utilizing the different information. We're currently driving in normal right now, which we're going to get on the freeway, because I want to demonstrate how quiet this car is because of the acoustic windows that have been added into this car. So we're getting up there. This does have your sort of typical Charge Eco power display like you'll find in a lot of the Toyota hybrids. And we'll get up to highway speeds here in a sec, and then I'll start talking about some of the other driving modes. So initial impressions of how the actual driving of the characteristics of the car are. It actually doesn't feel that heavy. The car does a really good job of sort of moving its weight around, which is really nice. And the steering is kind of your typical Toyota steering. It feels a little bit overboosted on the power steering side, which means it's actually really light, really easy to turn, which could be really nice, but that can actually be adjusted with some of the other modes as well. You don't really notice that it's front-wheel drive. Most people won't if you're not using it in a high-performance industry, making it not really a big deal that it's only on-demand all-wheel drive. It at least kicks in when you need it. So right now, we're on the freeway, and I can tell you we're doing freeway speeds, and you can hear there is almost no wind noise at all in this car. There's a little bit of the engine noise if you rev it up, but if you're holding a constant speed or using the car in cruise control, you could have a whisper quiet conversation in this car. It's so quiet. It's like a very luxurious experience, which is really nice, because something like this is a car that you'll be using in your daily life, possibly commuting to work on the freeway or taking on trips for either yourself or maybe bringing your family or your dog along. And it's nice to know that you just get a very pleasant cabin experience while driving this car. So I think that's a really nice touch. They didn't have to add the acoustic dampening windows, but I'm glad they did, because this car is so quiet at speed. It's really nice. So let's talk about the different ways that the driving modes can actually adjust the way the car handles. So of course, like I mentioned earlier, we're in normal, which Toyota recommends for your typical driving, your day-to-day, maybe city commuting, whatever. But then there's also eco and sport, and those are your main sort of 3 driving modes you can adjust between. If you put it in sport, that is generally recommended for using things like either a little bit of canyon carving, you have a little bit of turns, whatever the case is, you're feeling a little bit spirited that day, that's what that's for. What that does is it actually changes the steering wheel feel. It doesn't necessarily feel more direct or connected to me. It just gets the wheel a little bit heavier, so it makes it feel like you got a little bit more going on. You can gotta get a little bit of a forearm workout depending on what you're looking for. And of course, it'll adjust the sort of reviness of how the car feels to make it feel a little bit more responsive. So that's what's going on in sport. Then there's eco mode. So eco is an interesting one. Sport will actually kick itself out of sport. So the next time, if you turn the car off, next time you start the car, it'll no longer be in sport, it'll be in normal. Then there's eco mode. Eco is an interesting one because what that'll do is in typical Toyota Lexus fashion, it'll actually throttle back the climate control as it sees fit to make sure you save your economy. So maybe not ideal for 120-degree days in Phoenix like we have our summers, but it'll help control a lot of what you get for eco. It'll also limit your throttle control, so that'll help to get better gas mileage. This car has a combined rating of about 35 miles per gallon. With my regular driving, that's kind of going between whatever city, highway, just not really caring too much about it. I've actually been getting around 30 miles per gallon, which is pretty cool. That's not trying too aggressively to get the car all the way up to its maximum potential for economy, but that's really good nonetheless. Of course, you get all of your economy benefits while getting your SUV benefits, a full-size SUV nonetheless. So that's really nice here. Then there are some other modes. There is an EV mode, which Toyota does include, so does Lexus on all of their various hybrid models. And what that is that's supposed to take advantage of the fact that this car can technically drive on EV only, although I'll say it's in very limited distances and very low speeds. Really, it's not worth messing with. When you start the car, you'll notice that the engine doesn't start right away. It'll start in electric mode, and that, of course, is all to be preserving gas at the end of the day. So that's the way it exists because it's, I think, part of their sort of core computer stuff, not necessarily a necessity, not something I would really suggest using very often. Then there is trail mode. So again, not part of your standard driving modes, and there's a reason for that. What trail mode does is trail mode will actually adjust the all-wheel drive and make it so that it's all focused about making sure the car is gripping up. So it's generally not recommended for high-speed use at all. It's really suggested for things like off-roading, or if you're driving in really miserable, either snowy or off-road, rainy conditions, things like that. Just all focused about making sure that the vehicle gets traction. So that's sort of a main breakdown. You have, of course, your typical SUV visibility. You can see everything. The cameras make it really easy to either back in or park normally, whatever you're really looking for. This car is doing its job of being a jack of all trades, which again is the main theme of this car. This particular being the Platinum model means again that it's a little bit more up-tiered, a little bit higher focused on being a little bit more luxurious than some of the standard cars, but a lot of this will be found in the regular hybrid models. So with that, that's a general overview. This is a vehicle that is equipped to dominate suburbia. This is a suburban assault vehicle that features an upstately interior. It features lots of different driving characteristics and a lot of storage options for whatever you're really looking for from your Toyota Highlander. They featured some big quality life changes for the 2023 model that makes it just that much more enjoyable. That, in my opinion, you get 14 cup holders. Let's not forget that. That's by far the most important feature. And you get just good gas mileage at the end of the day, which of course, who can complain about good gas mileage? So with that, that's going to be the end of the video. If you're interested in checking out the Highlander for yourself, be sure to go to your nearest Toyota dealership, tell them all about how much you love this video, and now you're going to buy a Highlander. If you guys could go ahead and smash that like button for us, we'd really appreciate it, and get subscribed for more content like this in the future, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching.